Uh, Leisure Project, Planting Flowers by Antoine Bouy. History of Garden. Writing and art show that ancient people used their leisure time to enjoy and tend their gardens for thousands of years. Ancient people may have begun gardening to grow a particular tree which they found was useful, edible, and had a wonderful taste. Additionally, people had to spend a lot of time to gather fruits and trees products in the forest. I believe that these were the reasons that ancient people began gardening in their backyards or nearby their home. I also believe that the earliest gardens were herbs and or vegetables. Sooner or later, ancient people realized that not only could they grow their particular trees, but they can also grow flowers and move in their gardens. Their gardens from that point on would be more colorful than before. The Egyptians and Assyrians from the Middle East enjoyed their gardens in different ways. While Egyptians grew many different flowers, Assyrians usually plant trees in rows. However, Egyptians and Assyrians have the same ideas about their gardens, being able to provide herbs, vegetables, and useful trees. Historically, women started home gardens by themselves because they have nothing to do at home. Another reason was that women provide food for their families with small costs from their home gardens. Additionally, women started as home gardeners because they care for the health of their families and communities. Men in the past were expected as the head of the household to deal with social issues rather than small stuff at home, so they were not really interested in gardening for any reason. Today, women are more likely to spend their leisure time in gardens than men are. However, men in this century has been more involved on gardening than men of the last century because of the numbers of men who have taken up gardening or landscape jobs. Starting from the early 19th century, men have been involved in landscape jobs. So men usually do the landscape because they want to make money for their families, not for their hobbies. On the other hand, it is extremely hard to find women doing landscape jobs. Women usually garden during their leisure time and do not garden for making money. Age is also an issue around this activity when men are doing gardens. Elderly men were more likely to participate in garden activities than young men. Young men are not really concerned about what happens in their yard. If it seems important, they usually hire someone to take care of their gardens if maintenance is needed. In contrast, I think that when fast cars, pretty girls, or drunk overnight do not attract elderly men anymore. Most elderly men spend their leisure time to garden, visit their old friends, or read newspaper. Additionally, gardening has not been history changed because of the original purpose of the garden. People who garden today has the same purpose with the people in the past. They garden for self-sufficiency, their hobby, and reduce stress. Today, gardening is an activity of women's hobby, and it has not been changed from the past. Gardening is an activity that fits into the traditional ideals of leisure for women because the activity does not require a necessary follow-up in the schedule and involve less contact with someone else. According to Dowling John, men must face up to their social contract and bring food, historic time, or salary, modern time, for their families. They are not usually attracted by leisure activities such as gardening. In addition, biological response give men and women different motives to participate in different activities on their leisure time. Although women fit into this activity, different cultures may have different leisure choice. For instance, women living in developed countries have more opportunity than undeveloped or developing countries. They do not spend leisure time in their gardens, but they also use their leisure time for other activities. Today, some middle-class Los Angeles homeowners distance themselves from labor in their yards, hiring gardeners to mow and prune, while some permanently escape outdoor gardening labor through the construction of architectural gardens, with paved surfaces and rock gardens in lieu of or sparsely complemented by plants. On the other hand, some countries which are mostly undeveloped or developing countries will not allow women to contract with the outside world, so gardening would be prohibited. Additionally, women living in the developing countries have a very short leisure time to do their own thing. They do not have enough time to visit their friends, play sports, or participate in their favorite class. Thus, these women spend their small amount of leisure time in their gardens. This is the first time in my life that I started to plant some flowers when I began for my class project. After I decided that I am going to do in my project last month, I went to Walmart store. I chose Walmart store because it has everything I needed, and I did not need to drive around to buy my tools. I actually went there many times in the past, but I have never before looked around the garden center. I felt like this area was an area limited to women. I got nervous and afraid because I thought everyone was looking at me like I was an alien. I noticed that most of the customers in this area were women, and men did not seem interested in these activities, so they usually ignored the garden center. I did not know what I needed to buy, so I called my dad for help. He said I needed flower seeds, fertilizer soil, a flower pot, and so on. The flowers are not going to be fully grown in a month. He helped to plant the first tree and left the rest for me to take care of. I also went online and found a couple of useful videos on YouTube.com. I followed my dad's advice and YouTube to ensure my flowers would open. For one thing, I believe this situation was exactly to Bliss' character in the Witted and the ladies from the Calendar Girl movie, faced with their families, parents, or husbands, were surprised that their child or their wives did. I knew I had to be patient during the process, and I was disappointed with myself because I was overwatering and my plants lacked nutrition. I was wrong to believe that Mother Nature would grow all the trees in the world. Thus, my flowers were almost dead after a few days. Fortunately, I have found the videos that were made by Home Depot. It helped a lot. However, my flowers did not open until today, and I still have little confusion on my flowers and trees. It says on the package that flowers would open within 60 days, and my flowers were not full-grown trees yet. I am doing research and attempting to find a resolution for this problem. In addition, before I did this project, I thought that garden activities were limited to seeding a few seeds into the soil and entrusting to Mother Nature. But after this project finished, I felt that to grow a garden was not as easy as I thought. It has to be learned from rich, experienced person or deep research. And this gave me more respect for people who successfully grow a garden. Moreover, I did not participate in this activity before because all my friends were not doing it. They would laugh at me if they knew I was growing many flowers in my backyard. In my culture, men can grow gardens as a landscape job, but they cannot grow gardens for fun. If I had the chance, I will participate in this activity with understandable reasons. Otherwise, I will deny. Although women have had mostly equal opportunities for around 93 years, men are mostly supposed to be involved in strong activities, social contracts, making important decisions, and women are often still doing what their grandmothers did. In other words, men and women have different roles to play. As a matter of fact, this statement above will not be changed for at least a few more decades from now on.